Right here in my hand, I have the new iPad Air and the iPad Pro. The question is, which one is right for you? That's what we're gonna answer in this video. I wanna help you make the best decision you can because your money is so hard earned. You don't wanna waste a dime of your money getting something that's not gonna be good for you. So first up, let's talk about the physical design of these iPads. Now the iPad Air that I got is a really big iPad. This is the 13-inch model, and to me, that might be a little bit too big of an iPad for me. When I'm thinking about an iPad, I don't want to feel like I'm holding on to like a TV screen. And when you're looking at this iPad, it is just so massive that it really does feel like you're using a TV screen in your hand. So when looking at the design, first off, I got the blue color of iPad Air. That to me is the most appealing one. There are some other great colors, but for me, the blue one looks great. As you can see right here, there is only one camera. Now that is not a big deal for me. When I'm using any iPad, I don't need to take pictures. The biggest thing you need to do with a camera is you're probably gonna scan some documents. It is really helpful when you have an old iPad and you're going to a new iPad. They've got this little like circle of all these particles. You can scan that and instantly transfer all your stuff to the new iPad, but really you don't need many cameras on an iPad to make it a helpful tool. I can say for sure with my old iPad, I did not use the camera more than maybe 2 or 3 times, so it's not a big deal to have the one camera. Whereas when you're looking at the new iPad Pro, it does have a LiDAR sensor and a single camera. Now that LiDAR sensor is helpful to kind of get depth and all that kind of stuff. They did, however, get rid of the ultra wide camera that was on the iPad Pro previously. So here's the two iPads side by side. You can see a little bit of the difference of the size of them. This one is in the space black. This one, obviously, like I said earlier, is in the blue color. I definitely prefer space black, but in the end, these things, they are going to get some fingerprints on them. And so if you go with a lighter color iPad, fingerprints are not gonna be a big issue for you. Let's keep looking at more of the physical design of this iPad. Both of these iPads are very, very thin. Now they're not as thin as the 13-inch iPad Pro. That thing is a couple millimeters smaller, which is, really is an engineering feat, but these things are thin enough and light enough that it's never really gonna matter for you. So on this side, you've got the speaker grills. On the other side, you've got speaker grills as well, but you also have that USB-C, which is really helpful because when you're traveling, you only have one cable. I think Apple needs to move absolutely everything to USB-C once they did with the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. That was fantastic for everybody, but they still have a lot of peripherals that they need to get on USB-C. Now, if you want this wallpaper, go ahead and hit the link to my digital store in the description below. It is only $1, not much for you, helps me out. Now, to also give us a good size comparison, here is the iPad Pro on top of the iPad Air. As you can see, like that's a pretty sizable gap in there from the 11 to the 13-inch. So you can decide which one is gonna be right for you. For me, I definitely like the 11-inch feel in the hand. The 13-inch is really cool. It'd be for artists. We'll talk in a little bit about who they're for. I'm getting ahead of myself. So right now, let's get a look at the screens. They both look fantastic. This one is the tandem OLED screen, which means the blacks are gonna be a little bit darker, but iPad screens are so good, you don't really notice that much of a difference. So I think when you're looking at these screens, you're not gonna go wrong with either. They're both gonna look good. And here's the thing about screens. No matter whatever screen you get, you're not comparing it side by side to something else. And so you actually get used to whatever screen you've got, whether it's ProMotion or 60 Hertz, any of that, you get used to stuff really fast. Yes, ProMotion always looks better, but really your brain is so good at calculating things that everything smooths out in the end. Now, speaking of ProMotion displays, you can see the difference of these guys. It might not come through a ton on the camera, but this one is ProMotion. It's smooth and fast, especially in person, it looks a lot better. But the iPad Air is not ProMotion. It's a little bit clunkier, but man, it is not that big of a deal. Yes, the iPad Pro just looks better because it has the ProMotion that's 120 Hertz. The 60 Hertz is not bad. And so if that is a huge deal for you, if like the smoothness of the screen is a big deal for you, I would definitely go for the iPad Pro, but it's not a big deal for the iPad Air. I think it looks fine. In the end, both of these screens look so good that the colors are beautiful. The blacks are really dark and inky. Yes, the tandem OLED does look a little bit better, but the iPad Air, for me and for probably 99% of people who are not doing colorist work and all that kind of stuff, the iPad Air is gonna be great. Now they both got, hello! They both got their brand new cameras at the top of the iPad. So when you're doing any kind of meeting, like Zoom meeting, you're gonna have the camera no longer up at the top, or when it's in landscape mode, you're gonna have the top, portrait mode, you're gonna have it when it's in landscape mode. Next, let's talk about what is inside these iPads. Now, Apple's website has a very handy dandy little comparison right here. So first off, when you're looking at the iPad Pro or the iPad Air, it tells us that it comes in the 11 or the 13 inch, which is quite helpful. In these two different iPads, there are two different chips. In the iPad Pro, there's the new M4 chip. Now the M4 chip is very cool on the iPad. It's a really cool thing to have that powerful of a chip, that it's the first M4 device that Apple's put out. However, as always, the chip is not the biggest thing that the iPad needs to work on. They need to work on iPad OS, because iPads for the last like 3 or 4 years have just felt like they've never really taken full advantage of the iPad. So in the iPad Pro, you have the M4 chip. In the iPad Air right here, you've got the M2 chip. Now I can tell you this, with last year's iPad Pro, which had the M2 chip, I never once felt like it was slow. I never once felt like I had saturated the chip. And so if you're gonna look at these for power, you know, which one you want for more power, they're both completely fine. They're both able to do all different workflows. I mean, the M2 chip was able to do all sorts of video editing and photo editing, so neither of these you should make a decision off of power. Next, I wanna talk about the price of these two iPads. They are pretty different in price, and one of them is absolutely ridiculous. So let's look at the iPad Pro. The iPad Pro right now starts at $1,000. $1,000 for an iPad is absolutely wild. And then when you're looking down here at the 13-inch, $1,300 for a freaking iPad, when you could go get an iPad Air with an M3 chip for $1,100, $1,200. That's crazy that an iPad is the same price as a full-blown laptop. All right, an iPad Pro with the keyboard and the Apple Pencil is $2,877. There is no world where an iPad should cost that much money. Next, let's look at the iPad Air. This is a lot more reasonably priced. $599 for the 11-inch and $800 for the 13-inch. Now, the fact that this 13-inch is, or the iPad Air is the old iPad Pro, so the M2 iPad Pro is essentially the same exact thing as the iPad Air. $800 is a solid price for this thing. Now, with iPads, I do not suggest going really high on your storage options, partially because these now have USB-C, which means you can add SSDs to them, which is really great. So I would just go base model. Then if you are an artist, get the iPad Pro. But if you're not an artist and you're just maybe an office worker, you want to take some notes, get the USB-C Apple Pencil. It's great. Now, once you do all those things all out, this thing costs $977. That's still very expensive. When you could get an M2 MacBook Air for about that same price, I would always go, if it's the one device you're going to get, I would always go with a MacBook over an iPad. But if you're somebody that iPad is the way you want to do it, definitely go with the iPad Air. So who are these iPads for? This iPad Pro is awesome, but for me, I think for 99% of people will buy the iPad Air. It's a much better investment. If you're a professional and you are making money at your craft, go for the iPad Pro. But if you're like most people, you're just kind of using this thing to consume some entertainment and all that kind of stuff, you're not really trying to create a ton, don't go with the iPad Pro. $1,300 for an iPad Pro is way too much money, but if you get the iPad Air, I think you'll be happy. So guys, tell me in the comments below, which one of these iPads are you more impressed with? Do you like the iPad Pro or do you like the iPad Air? Tell me why. Like this video if you found it helpful, sub to the channel. I'll see you all in the next one.